So, because of the Boston Tea Party, British officials are upset, and Parliament passed 4 new laws. So right after the Boston Tea Party, because British officials and English merchants were mad, especially the East India Company, Parliament passed 4 new laws. Because they were upset over the Boston Tea Party, the British Parliament passed 4 new laws. Now here's why they passed them. This is going to be on your test for sure. Why did the British Parliament pass 4 new laws after the Boston Tea Party? To strengthen control over the American colonists in Massachusetts. So the whole reason that the British Parliament passed these 4 new laws was to strengthen control over the American colonists in Massachusetts. To strengthen control over the American colonists in Massachusetts. Because they think they're kind of getting out of line. They're doing things that are subversive, like dumping several tons of tea that didn't belong to them into Boston Harbor. Well, what probably prior to this did the people of Boston and Massachusetts resent the most about the British? Now think, what don't they like? Now, Miss Wasson, you might have an edge on this because of an answer you gave me the other day that you thought was, this one you didn't say was wrong or right, but you gave me the right answer. First time I've ever had it. Okay, what really irritates British colonists in Massachusetts, especially Boston? The presence of British soldiers. Okay, because you said they wanted them out. Well, after the Boston Tea Party, not only did the British Parliament pass 4 new laws to strengthen control over the American colonists in Massachusetts, they sent another 4,000 soldiers to team up with the 4,000 that were already there, which makes the ratio now 1 to about what? 2.5. Good math guy, yeah. Think about that. 1 British soldier for every 2.5 people. You almost are being more populated with British soldiers than you are people living there. So the British Parliament sends an additional 4,000 troops to Boston, joining the 4,000 that are there, making it about 8,000 British troops because of their anger over the Boston Tea Party. Now, these 4 laws that are passed by Parliament to basically show the colonists who is boss go down in American history as the Intolerable Acts. Okay? These 4 laws. I'm going to obviously tell you what they are. So here are the 4 laws. Now these are 4 laws that they throw on the people of Massachusetts, known as the Intolerable Acts, just to show who's boss and to strengthen their hold over the American colonists because they think they're getting out of control. Law number 1. Closed the port or harbor of Boston to all shipping. No ships in or out of the harbor of Boston. Closed the port of Boston or Boston Harbor for all shipping in or out. Until when? Think about it. Until when? Until they agreed to pay the tea that they ruled. So the first law in the Intolerable Acts, that doggone Burlington's got some going over there. I hope somebody's watching this from Burlington because you're getting after it, right? So it closed the port of Boston to all shipping in or out until the colonists paid for all the tea they had dumped into the harbor. That was the first law. Now to understand Law 2, we've got to kind of go back before we started lecturing on 1750. When people came from Europe to these colonies, in order to start a colony which allowed you to govern yourself to a point with these assemblies, right? The British government had to give you a charter. That was like a permission slip, like a pass to go down to the tech lab, so to speak. So when these people came over to Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Pennsylvania with all this type of thing, the leader of the group that came over had to secure a charter, C-H-A-R-T-E-R, a charter from the King of England to get permission to have the colony. Well, Law 2 revoked the British charter in Massachusetts. revoked it. Now they're already there, right, Macklin? But what could they take away from them? They couldn't tell them to leave. What could they take away, though, if they revoked their charter? The right to govern themselves. Okay? So the second law of the Intolerable Acts simply was a law that revoked Massachusetts' charter. And although they can't just ship them all back to England, they can revoke their opportunity to govern themselves. So, do they already have a governor of Massachusetts? They do, but when they revoked the charter, they replaced that governor with a British general by the name of Thomas Gage. So, Law 2 revoked the Massachusetts charter, which gave them the right to govern themselves, and the governor of Massachusetts was replaced by a British Army general by the name of Thomas Gage. He now will run Massachusetts. How will it run? Pretty Britishy, so to speak. So General Thomas Gage, who's the commander-in-chief of the British Army in America, what he is he's the head of all soldiers that are in America. Most of them are in Boston and Massachusetts. Well, he takes over as governor of Massachusetts. That's still under Law 2. Well, now he's the general governor, Gage, and once he took over the governorship, they brought even more British troops into Massachusetts to help him restore order. Okay? How are these acts going over these laws, you think? It's going to lead us towards, it's going to move us towards independence. Okay, Law 3. And this will be familiar to you. Law 3 required the colonists to provide food and housing for who? British soldiers. So the Quartering Act, although it's not called the Quartering Act again, the Quartering Act is reissued. And now colonists by law, according to Law 3, have to provide food and housing for British soldiers that were sent to America to enforce all these new laws we're talking about. Now the fourth law is a little bit hard to understand, but I'll explain it to you. So, how about these guys that fired, that led to the Boston Massacre? Where were they tried? Where were they tried, the location? In the colonies, right? And they were defended by John Adams. Well, this new fourth law stated that if any British official or any British soldier got in trouble and was going to be tried, guess where they were going to try him? Great Britain. Okay? Is that, that basically that's just saying we're going to send him back to Great Britain and nothing's going to happen to him, right? So that was Law 4. That any British official or any British soldier that may be charged with a crime would be tried back in Great Britain rather than Massachusetts. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the Intolerable Acts that came immediately after the Boston Tea Party. Which takes us to our next subtopic, which is the Suffolk Resolves. Suffolk Resolves. It's got a tongue twister. The Suffolk Resolves.
What's that?
You want to have that on there?
No.
Oh, bummer. That's a new topic. I think I just added this in this summer because it's on your AT exam. So let's just kind of follow, not the topic subtopic sheet, but your next subtopic is the Suffolk Resolves. S-U-F-F-O-L-K. U-F-F-O-L-K. I'll write that. S-U-F-F-O-L-K. Resolves. Yeah, I did add that this summer because I was doing a little research on the AP exam. Now, the Intolerable Acts also had another name. What did they call it? Say it. No. We're going to get to that. What did they call it? I don't have it on your sheet, do I? sure I get it right here. What is that, Dalton? What does that mean? Coercive. What does that mean? Coercive. If I have a trying to say that. If I coerce you into something, I do what? Force you into it, right? So the colonists referred to the intolerable acts as the coercive acts. Okay? That's something that's put on you by force. Now, because of the intolerable acts, these colonists had held numerous meetings in Massachusetts. Numerous meetings. And what did they do at these meetings that we talked about? They put together a bunch of something as a statement of your opinion, resolutions. So these delegates from Boston and other surrounding towns in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, got together, had numerous meetings. The big meeting, the one that counted, is when these people got together in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, between September 6th, 1774 and September 9th, 1774. Delegates from all over Massachusetts met at a meeting place in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. And during that time, they put together a series of resolutions, which again is a statement of opinion, will, or intent of a body. We talked about it before. Okay? Who do you think headed up this big meeting in Suffolk County, Massachusetts that ran from September 6, 1774 to adjourned on September 9th? Think hard. Who headed it up? Who? No? Good guess. No? Nope. The founding father you never knew. Dr. Joseph Warren. Dr. Joseph Warren headed up this big meeting in Suffolk County. And he really captured the mood of the delegates. In other words, he persuaded them. He got them going. Okay? And they passed a series of resolutions that would become known as the Suffolk Resolves. These are the resolutions they come up with. And these resolutions had the following 6 statements. This is what the resolutions stated. It's a statement of opinion, right? It's a statement of will. It's a statement of intention of the body, which is the delegates. And this is what they stated. 6 things. They said that the intolerable acts were unconstitutional and void. They declared that the intolerable acts were unconstitutional and void. In other words, they weren't going to do what? Follow them, right? The second statement that the resolutions made, known as the Suffolk Resolves, is they called for the resignation of all British officials that enforced those illegal acts, known as the Intolerable Acts. So the resolution called for the resignation of all officials, British officials, who enforced those illegal acts. The third statement the resolution made, which was kind of, I think, a strong statement, is Massachusetts was going to establish a separate state until the Intolerable Acts were repealed. They were going to be their own state or colony, individual, separate of all the other 12. The resolution stated because Massachusetts was the one getting hit with these Intolerable Acts, that they were going to establish a separate state until the acts were repealed. The fourth statement that the Suffolk Resolves made was that any future tax collections would be retained by who? Not British officials, but by who? What? Massachusetts government. Now here's what they're saying, one leads into the other. We're going to set up a separate state, right? And any taxes that are going to be collected are going to be retained by the new Massachusetts government or state, not British officials. Okay? So they do not want British officials collecting any taxes. They want officials within their own group, colony, state, that they're thinking about breaking up into. The fifth statement that was made from these resolutions called for a boycott of British goods and cutting off trade with Great Britain. A boycott of British goods and all trade cut off with Great Britain. Resolutions call for the boycott of British goods and boycott or not trading with the country at all. Now the sixth one's kind of interesting because it sets the stage for later. What don't the 13 colonies really have established that you'd think they might have established that Britain's got a big presence in, especially Massachusetts? What don't the Americans have set up? Their own military. You got the right word. So the sixth statement made by the resolutions is that they encourage the colonies to appoint militia officers and set up their own local militias. Militia. So the sixth statement on the Suffolk Resolves was that the people of Massachusetts were advised to appoint militia officers and commence arming or starting their own militia. Now we got to figure something out, the difference between a militia and military. Now, is America going to have a military? We're going to get into that. When they get in the Revolutionary War, we have a Continental Army. And who leads the Continental Army for America? George Washington. Well, separate colonies had their own militia. And militia are led by individual militia officers and are not part of a regular army. So during the Revolutionary War, we're going to have an overall Continental Army, but each of these colonies is going to have their own militia, and they're going to kick in and help who? The Continental Army. Sometimes. We'll talk about that later. But that's the idea. Okay? So, that is the Suffolk Resolves. It simply was Joseph Warren getting delegates from around the different counties in Massachusetts together because they were affected by the Intolerable Acts. They met at Suffolk County, Massachusetts, and the resolutions they came up with became known as the Suffolk Resolves. And I gave you the six statements that those resolutions made. Okay? Now, that'll take us to our next subtopic, which I don't think you probably have on yours, or maybe you do. Did you have support of the intolerable acts in the colonies? Is that on there? Okay. So we're going to go to support of the intolerable acts in the colonies. Support of the intolerable acts in the colonies. I apologize for having those sheets wrong, but I remember now I added this summer because I was doing the AP test study. And you need to know the Suffolk Resolves. Now, despite these intolerable acts, despite the way the colonies are being treated, especially Massachusetts, there were a large number of colonists who remained loyal to Great Britain. Even through this hardship, there was a large number of colonists who remained loyal to Great Britain. They were called, well, Loyalists or Tories. They get the Tory name more when we get into the Revolutionary War. But they're called Loyalists now, okay? Now, it might seem hard to believe, but there were a number of colonists that lived in America that remained loyal to Great Britain. They didn't want any part of any of this revolution. And they were called loyalists. And they believed in their heart that they were British citizens, and since they were British citizens, they should obey the laws by Parliament without protesting. So if you're going to have an American Revolution moving towards independence, the struggle for independence, etc., you'd like to have everybody on board, would you not? But that wasn't the case. So getting back to what I kind of alluded to earlier, these militias that you would think would be loyal to the Continental Army, we even had times, our first Civil War wasn't in the 1860s. Our first Civil War, in essence, was when we had colonial militias fighting against colonial militias, especially in the southern part of the Revolutionary War, where we were actually fighting ourselves. Does that make sense? That was really the first Civil War. It didn't amount to near as much, obviously, but it happened. So these militias actually fought against each other. Well, these loyalists, I kind of feel bad for them. You know, they were tired of the continued violence. They were tired of the bickering. They were tired of the disorder. That's what we were starting to get in this country. And what they tried to do is try to get the British government and the colonists to work out a compromise. That's what they tried to do. Well, it didn't go very far, to be quite frank. With that said, that'll take us to our last subtopic. You don't have this on here either, but I want you to write it down. The last subtopic is the first Continental Congress is established. The first Continental Congress is established.